we had a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and after the meeting was this idea that somebody asked a question and said, hey, I have this code that I use and I go query AD and it just takes a long time and I want to try and do it at scale. How do I parallelize this? And we're like, well, the meeting's over. If you want to share your screen, we'll make you a presenter and let's talk about it. And so I thought, so he wasn't too familiar with some of the functionality of PowerShell in that form. And so we just had a discussion. Hey, move your code here. Let's talk about this and put it. And so we basically rewrote his code in the next, 30 minutes after hours. And so that was kind of what this premise is. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about that. Hey, let's review the code here. And I'm gonna purposefully show you some code that works. How well it works? Well, let's try and improve it, and let's improve it some more. And also, I want to encourage, Stephen Judd, who always loves to tear apart my code, is like, hey, what do you put out this? Let's try and add this, and let's add this and add that, because that's the whole point. Is we're all learning from each other. We go online to Stack Exchange and Stack Overflow or even PowerShell.org, looking for, hey, how do I find out this? And even you'll see later on, one of my things is, hey, what did Copilot tell me to do? Does it do what I really wanted to do? Can I take what CodePilot gave me and make something of it, right? So I want to kind of talk through that. We may even get there, we may not get there. So any questions? No flow. So going to be straightforward. Here we go. So So I have this function, and you're going to see get uptime 150 times. So it does nothing. It's basically a glorified. That's the right one. Yeah. Just go tell me my computer has rebooted. What rebooted 38 minutes ago. It's been up for 38 minutes. So all it does is goes and gets the computer and tells me how long the computer's been up for. Nothing more. Right? And here it is. So I'm going to query AD and goes and gets me a bunch of stuff. Hey, included doesn't catch errors, right? So I can do it. My code, this initial version of this code, throws errors in the middle of my data. So I can run it again and, actually, what was the other point? Hey, run it again. It doesn't even account for the fact that you give it some bullshit data, BS data. Sorry, I'm cursing. But let's go back and look at the code and see what we have. So I'm gonna kind of, if you feel like I'm going too slow, let me know. But also I'm gonna kind of purposely go pretty slow and kind of talk about all the different things in which we're working on, right? And so I create a function, right? Default commandlet binding, all straightforward. But then there's a parameter block. So we're gonna take in computer name. I'm gonna say if you don't give it a computer name, it's gonna use the default computer name, actually the local environment computer name, the computer itself. It's got some aliases, so whatever I pass in, it can use that information. So if I pass in an object that talks to AD, actually that'll be part of it. If I'm actually talking to WMI, that's actually the computer name in WMI. So I could pass in an object that I pull from WMI or a bunch of other things. And that's the property name for the computer name in DNS. So if you query DNS, that's what you get back. So this is also, I guess I didn't really talk about where we are. So premise was this idea of we took a gentleman after hours. Hey, he wanted to get some insights on how to make his code work better or do other things. And so last meeting's talk was an idea of a skill builder. So kind of come back to the fundamentals in a practical way of developing your skills with PowerShell. And so we're going to kind of talk about the true fundamentals and why you do this. And so then you can, grow from that. So, hey, I'm not using that. Then you can use that. Are you using aliases properly? Are you using different things properly? So part of the documentation, you'll find out there's the param block. There's going to be a begin block, process block, and then an end block. All right. That is the raw part of all PowerShell functions of all kind. They're not absolutely required. And so you can work without some of them, but effectively I think you should put them even there, even if they're just empty. it kind of gives you a reference to run from. All right, so in this here, we have basically two parameters. One is actually a string. Actually, it's kind of special because it's an array of strings. So we can pass in multiple, what it can be is multiple something. Then I have this just a standard switch. Is it true? Not there, full stop. Inside this begin block, if you're not familiar with pipelining, actually we can kind of talk about it here. So if you write code on a single line, it will only do it once. It always runs the parameter block. Hey, get your parameters. It'll run begin always. Process will only run once, and then end will run. As far as the code back on the previous screen. So if you put your code and it's tied to the pipeline, what this does is get my 80 computers, gets an array of computers, only give me the first 4. It really doesn't matter at this point. You can go get them all, right? And then it comes here and it pipes them into the command. If the command supports pipelining, again, using that same code we just talked about before, or we just saw before, what's going to happen is it's going to come in, assign all my parameters, okay? It will run the begin block once at the very beginning of all the everything you piped in. And for each object, for each one of those things that you pipe in, it'll run the process block. So it'll run process block once and then run the next one and run the next one and run the next one until you get to the end and then finally run end, right? And so as it's coming through, and so I bring that up because that was kind of one of the points that the other gentleman didn't understand completely, was this idea of, hey, I want to basically, query AD and give me a bunch of information and then do all this in parallel. That was the kind of the respect, and that was kind of even what this talk kind of talked about, was adding parallel to it. Well, one of the options to us at this point was to, instead of running it each time in the process block, hey, well, I want to take that out of the process and do them all in sequence, out of sequence. And we'll see that in a minute. Right. And so it's going to come here and run all of this code for each item that it runs into. So and then this block here is just basically, hey, if you pass in multiple, if it's an array, I create a single item for every time it goes through. And so this is the structure. If you ran just computer name and you stuck it down here, it would run for one computer name. But if you passed in an array, hey, well, I take the array and I split the array apart, and I take it apart and I create a for each one. So I wish I could do that. How do I do that? No. So here I take a single item, right, and I put it in there. But if I actually, I think later on, I'll show it later on in that point. But here it is. It's working. There's some errors. That's kind of where I'm here. This is our raw code. I hope I'm staying on kind of schedule here.
Just a quick question. Yeah, I'm a little bit lost. Okay, I seen this page here. I was writing down something. Then when I looked up again, there were just like 7 lines of code.
Mm-hmm. I have so this is the actual function itself, right? And then later on, I have just a simple run, which basically will take that and put it into memory. So if you're not familiar, I'm dot sourcing that actually does 0. Get uptime 0. I'm just dot sourcing it so that I can then use it later on. And so as I run this, it's just the run. So then the code is there as a separate item, and then I can run them all, in different pieces and talk about each one as it goes along. And calling it 0 for now, then we're going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way down to 8. Right? And so 1 is slightly different because, hey, we're going to add some error handling. And so when I first ran this before, as we saw, hey, if it runs, it doesn't do anything. It gives me an error. I'm like, okay, so I start off, I want to add some error handling, because that's also part of this functionality, is that you start off with this code, and then, hey, I'm going to get a bunch of stuff from AD. Well, I got some BS data in AD, or I got some objects that are just stale. I'm trying to query and do some stuff to machines. Well, am I going to catch those errors? Is it going to just break the code completely and just dump? No, we want to kind of continue on in that flow. And so it is some of those things where, hey, do I want to catch those errors? What do you want to do? And so I want to kind of quickly talk about that as well. So it's the exact same code as a 0. Everything looks like pretty much the exact same, except we added something called the try-catch block. So we're adding some error handling at this point. So if the same code that was in 0 before is run and any errors happen, hey, we just threw an error saying the can't connect to the machine or the host name doesn't exist. It's going to get caught and says, well, actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to catch it. I'm going to catch that error instead of actually passing it up and stopping the code completely. No. What we're going to do is I'm actually, well, in the code itself, what's it trying to do is create a boot time object and create an uptime, figure out what the uptime is of this computer, right? That's what it's trying to do long term, right? So I decided not just to throw the error. I just said, just give me something, give me an empty thing, right? So that's what it creates at this point. So I still get my uptime, I still get my boot time, but it just becomes empty, right? Then the last part here is just creating an object that then we can output back out. So as we saw the first time, oh, I need to run this code. So as I just saw, run that. This looks just like before, and the number is going to grow and grow and grow. But now if I pass in an empty, like a BS answer, okay, I get so now I'm passing an array, you know, so now this is an array. I get a real object and then nothing, right? I still got something, and I caught an error. Verify that the computer, oh, because I went 0. I missed that 0. Why did that not work? Because I'm running the wrong function, right? So I get a real value, and then I get the other one. And again, I'm outputting objects. I'm going to format it into a table. Let's do that. And it looks better. It kind of looks a little bit better, right? And so I always get something back, right? And I can then say, hey, anything with this value, I know I just couldn't talk to it. So if I'm outputting to hey, go give me all this data here and output it into like a CSV or some other table, I at least get something back, you know? So I made that conscious choice to give me something, give me, you know, some flag or something that's online or offline, something. But I chose to actually give me an object back, right? As opposed to just nothing. Sometimes people choose to do nothing and say, just skip right over the error and I just won't get it back, right? If I have 100 items and only 50 are valid, I get 50 output. Oh, maybe I want all 100, but I want to know that 50 of them were bad, right? So kind of a conscious choice. The way we catch those errors, or we catch this for each time we want to do it, we can create this thing called the try-catch block, right? And we can try some work inside this block of code, and then we can catch any errors that happen to place, right? If it happens to be a terminating error. Question? Did somebody ask something? All right.
Phil, on your try and catch block, do you have a message that pops up saying that?
Nope.
Could you add that in to indicate to the user, hey, this machine is invalid, or would it be beneficial in your opinion?
It's a conscious choice. So we can come in here. We can certainly come in here and say, write warning, computer name. Hey, computer's not reachable. I love the code Copilot. There we go. Hit save. Coming back to this guy. We're gonna run him again, and then I run this. And here he goes, and it says, "Hey, we got a warning." I didn't put that right, but where did I missed it? But I could get that.
Misspelled the variable.
That's why it didn't work firstly. There you go. Copilot failed me. There you go. Da-da-da-da is not reachable, right? So you could just as well do that, right? And I'm also using some verbose stuff just so I can see, you're going to see that later on why I want to do that, but it's there. But I got back nothing. And then we could just as well, as you just described, we don't actually need to output anything completely. We can do some other logic as we want to do. You know, if we could say, hey, we can only output if we actually got something back and just skip out and don't do anything, right? I could take this entire section here. Now we're going to do, again, as I said before, this is going to be, you know, fully organic, and we don't need to do that. So we don't need any of this. Yeah, let's see what happens here. So on this, so we're going to take the 1, and now it only outputs real data, right? Hey, this was unreachable, but I only get valid data, right? So what we're doing in this form is really quickly is I just took the output data. So hey, I'm constructing an object one. That's why I love VS Code. So I took this block, which I was saying for every single item, if I input something, I want something out. Okay, you know what? I only want something if what I actually got is true. What it got something. If I could do something, then output. Otherwise, I just wrap the whole thing in that try catch, and then here we go. So it only outputs actually if it has something. So this comes output, comes out only if it's get to. All right. So similar, another way to kind of resolve this parallelism and this error checking, you know what? Forget it. I only want to run this if I actually know it exists. So instead of catching errors at that point, we still want to catch the errors. If there is an error, it could be something. But you could also just use, test connection. Hey, I want to try and reach out to this, but it only reach out and give me something back if it actually exists. If I got an actual ping back. So this is almost similar to the other one. So you can see it looks just like the other one. Hey, we're using test connection. I'm checking this machine and I got some data back.
That's fine.
We're going to do similar.
Hey, Phil.
Yep.
Real fast. Can you turn on screencast mode in your VS Code? Because you're using shortcut keys and it's hard to follow when you're running something.
All right. Hold on.
F1 screencast.
Cast. F8. Yeah, look at that.
Thank you.
All right. So in this form, you can kind of see is that we're getting data back. But as I said, or here we are in this form, is what's happening. What am I? Where I lost track of what I wanted to say. Backspace. We're clicking. Now you got me thinking. I keep seeing words appear on my screen. Mm-hmm. So it's going to throw an error, but it's actually not immediately coming back because it's not there. It's actually trying to ping this. It's just waiting for that connection to happen, right? It's trying to ping it. It's waiting for the timeout to actually happen. And then, oh, finally comes out, but we didn't do anything. Similarly, hey, we're going to go get all these machines, and then it's going to sit there and wait for that one machine. These machines exist. I don't have access to them. They're throwing errors. They give me that blank entry. But then actually 7 doesn't even exist. That was deleted a long time ago. So I basically have an entry in AD for an object that doesn't even exist, right? So that's why it hangs at 7. But 4 or 5, they're just out there, but I just don't have access to them. And so kiosk, hey, there's an entry, there's an IP for it, but I don't have access. But these I actually have data for. I'm getting data back. So it's been up for 2 days, it's been up for 5 days, and these other ones I just can't even see, or it's just not been up forever. So still to that same point, we can take in a bunch of stuff, we pipe it, but if I can't actually talk to it, if I have just a rogue entry, I still hang. So the objective kind of too is, can I do all of this in true parallel and keep going? So questions, thoughts? Sorry. Here we go. All right. Control-J, toggle visibility. So what's the next thing we're going to do? We're going to try and do this stuff in parallel. Actually, let me come back to, I want to see uptime 1. Yeah, we're going to use 1 as our example. Oh, we use 2. We use 2 as our example. I'm going to close that one. Close 1. This one. Where did 3 go? There you go. That's what I wanted. All right. So here we are back to number 2, right? So we kind of saw this structure. We have our begin block, we have our process block, and we have this for each. So if we pass in a bunch of them, it's going to go systematically go through them. If we pipe in a bunch of them, it will systematically go through them, but just run the entire process block gets run each time a pipeline happens. If we pass it in as a parameter, it'll just do that whole thing as one process block, right? So you can read the documentation some more about some of those processes, but I'm kind of pointing that out because here's going to be a change. So we're going to move to 3, and what we're going to do is this looks almost identical. Hey, here's our parameter block, but our begin block becomes a lot different. So now we have all this code inside of our begin block. So what's going to happen is that, hey, we still have this this new item, but all of that code that we had before, all of the checking, we're going to stick it inside of a script block. That's probably not a good thing. Screw it. We're not going to do that now because I'm going to change my code. Don't do that, Phil. Don't change your code midstream.
Check in.
Or you know what I could probably do? Here we go. We're in VS Code. Change all occurrences to script. All right, there we go. So we're just basically defining a script block. This looks just like we did before. This script block also is because we want to potentially give it more data. We want to make it parameterized. We can give it parameters. Hey, we know a computer, what we're going to do now, whether we other things we want to put in. That's what we kind of inputted from the outside before in our code. Now we want to kind of inject that into this other script block that we get. And then you're asking yourself, why the hell did we just take all our code that was in the process block and we shoved it into this other thing inside the begin block? Well, again, what happened before is when you run all your code, it runs the begin block first, then it runs your process every item that goes through. Well, if you define this other function that you can call inside of your process block, you can call the process in parallel. And so that's actually what we're going to do. There is a structure called start jobs. So you can create your new job, right? And so in the script inside the process block, for every time we get an item, right, we're going to still loop through just so that, hey, we can account for an array. But then we're going to create a job for each one of those items, right? And so we're going to take that script block, which we've defined previously. We're going to pass in some variables each time. So here's the current computer name. We already defined what now was, and then hey, that flag, that true false flag that we had before. Hey, we're going to use that. We're going to shove it inside there, and we're going to give it a name. So every single time we go through the process block, we're going to create a job and just let it go. We're going to create a job and keep on going. Create a job, keep on going. Actually, we're not going to keep on going. We're going to come down to 55, and we're going to say, hey, go. I'm going to do the first one and keep on going. Then right after that, we're going to say, go get me all the completed jobs. Well, most likely, the job you just gave it is not completed yet. So it'll skip right over. All right, well, go give me the second item. Second item, go. If number 1 is finished, by now I have, okay, we're going to go get that job. So we can go get any completed jobs. We'll receive them, and we're going to automatically remove them. And then we just do some other stuff. It's just like a run space stuff because it's going to give you a run space, but I want the exact same item type we have, right? And so for each time you go through that loop, it's going to start creating jobs, spitting out jobs that as they've been completed, and just keep there. Once I get to the end, we're going to get to the end block. Now what are we going to do? We're just going to wait for all the rest of the jobs to finish. So whatever hasn't completed already, we're just going to wait for it and then finish. So let's see what that looks like. Any questions there? It was kind of a real twist in which I don't see a lot of people who are, not too familiar with PowerShell. This is a structure that they don't really understand there. So I pause.
So what happens if VS Code crashes or your computer reboots to develop that?
What happens if the session dies in the middle of that, it's just a matter of everything, your entire run space, your entire memory space goes away, right? So there is, some other code you can add as far as logging. Hey, if you're right now, I'm keeping it all in memory and just keeping it to the console. So if you're trying to account for what happens if I can write multiple times or if I need to do that, well, you could be writing to a file the whole time, right? Instead of getting the job, and right now I'm just selecting it, sending it to the console, right? I could be writing to a file the whole time. I could be writing to a database the whole time if we're trying to do it. And just what we're trying to do. And so but ultimately the lesson here is just that, hey, we're going to do it in sequence. So take the item, put it into a job, leave it off. I'm going to throw it to basically it's a run space. So it's creating a run space, a separate run space. and a thread safe run space, giving it a separate run space, and keeps on going. So it's kind of like the in other languages, like it's like a daemon process. Throw this daemon process out there and let it go. And when it's done, we're going to have this other code down to 55 that's going to say, hey, when it's done, let's go pick them back up. But I'm just going to start generating these out here. And if I had code in here in the script block that actually takes 15 seconds to run, I don't really give a crap. I'm going to keep it in there, and when they're done, I'm going to wait. So it'll just sit there and keep going. So I could do 100 machines, and then it'll just go.
Yeah. So like in Java, you're basically creating the thread and then running. So the thread's running, and then what you do is you do a join, and what happens then it waits for them, and then you can do the prints.
Yep.
That's pretty close to what you've been.
Kind of close, yes.
Yeah.
So
it's basically used to prevent race conditions.
Well, so get job uses run spaces. We'll talk a little bit about using threads. And so you also need to just be aware if you're trying and truly optimize and parallelize, or whatever you say. You know what I'm trying to say? Is to do it is you have to use thread safe processes. And so if you're trying to share some of those that a list who's been completed, who hasn't been completed, and you're going to be updating records at that point, you just have to do it in a thread safe manner, right? You have to use those constructs. So that is there. I'm not going to talk about it. I thought that was going to be too deep, so I didn't want to have a reference to it, but we'll talk about it a little bit. So
Phil, would you put something at the end if you're running this in a large environment and you may have machines that just hang? Would you put something at the end just for timers saying, hey, if I don't get any jobs back within this period of time, I'm just going to exit out with the information that I have?
Yeah, I could just as well. You kind of saw it at some point here. What I did is I basically did a blind wait at the very bottom. I just say, go get all the jobs and just wait for them indefinitely. So there is a timeout for this waiter, for this wait, that says, hey, you can wait, but only wait 10 seconds, right? Go get me all the jobs and wait for anybody's coming. And if it waits more than 10 seconds, keep on going. Forget about all this other stuff.
Nice, thank you.
Right? So it is possible to have that timeout truly in there, right? So we're just generating in these and just say, hey, wait for them all. So this blindly wait for them all. So you kind of saw before, hey, this looks just like the other ones. That's why I keep running this one. But then this is going to give me all the Win10 VDI machines. And so here we go. I saw each one of those checks you saw at the very beginning. So here I am. I'm just creating a run job for each one of these. Now they haven't all come back yet. Now I'm just waiting for the rest of them to come back, right? And so you saw at first, I was generating all these jobs. I did the first one. Okay, keep on going. Keep on going. Keep on going. Oh, I finally got one back. Oh, here comes all the other ones right back, right? And so, hey, one came back by the time I got to 7. Two came back and I was on to 8, right? So I got data back as I was generating. And then all of these other ones keep going. And it would then just wait for them all, right? I didn't actually go through, probably could have. I could probably go through a loop and just say, just keep doing this loop and say, just keep waiting until I get run jobs. You know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to kind of see at this point. We're going to do this slightly different again. And we're going to say, what are we going to say? We're going to say, while get job is state running. There you go. Yeah, that works. Sleep. Seconds 1. Right. Morning. All right. What the heck did I just do? We're going to come here. We're going to make So to your point there, yeah, we're gonna get all the jobs. So long as we have something running, right? We're gonna go get the completed ones, wait for whatever that is, get whatever actually I don't need to wait anymore because I'm only gonna get the completed ones. I'm gonna receive the job, I'm gonna receive whatever, and then I wanna say auto remove because I wanna remove it, I don't wanna keep it. And then it's gonna wait, get whatever's being completed, then wait for 1 second, then start again and start again until we're finally done, right? So I'm going to save. I'm going to run this whole thing again. And we kind of saw before is
So
that, yeah,
on your code, you've got an exclude property. What was that exclude property?
this was just about the run spaces. And so because I'm using jobs and I'm getting back the job, it's going to add the run space ID of whatever was done. That's just a job functionality. And so I just kind of drop it out so that it still looks like what we had before. Otherwise, no, we can, I'm going to see what we get back. Actually, I don't need all this other stuff. And we'll just put it there. And you'll see where we're at. So thanks for pointing that out. We'll see what it looks like the other way. So back to where I was going, we talked about before, hey, we're getting the first 5 items. We haven't gotten anything back. By the time we got to the 7th item to put in, we finally got some data back, right? Because it just took that long to go get it. And we're getting them back, not because like out of order, but we're getting them back in order in which they've completed. And then we finally got to this end block because we've given them all, and then we just blindly waited for them all to come back. That's what we did originally. But now oh my gosh, Rob, no, it's not Rob. Yeah, Robert. For Robert is we're going to do the same thing again, but it'll be slightly different. We'll see it slightly different come back. We'll see them come back as they come along. So go run the new version. Not F7, F5, F8. So here we go. Oh, there we go. Coming back out of that order. And as they come along, why do I not get them back? What do I do wrong? Waiting for my jobs. I don't get.
Well, you filtered out your select statement. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, the received job would have received it, but we didn't get them. I was expecting to only get back.
So why the while statement? That part I didn't get.
I want to loop. I want to only get back the completed jobs, but then I want to go back and go get the next set of completed jobs and get the next set of completed jobs.
But can't you just pipe get job to receive job? That's where I'm getting confused at.
It will get back. It will get back the state of all the jobs, right?
Yeah.
So I only want to get back the completed jobs and only receive back the completed jobs. Any of the jobs that are still running, I want to let them continue on to run.
Okay, because when I do that in my code, I just have get job and then I pipe it to receive job with the wait parameter, and I don't have any while loop or anything like that.
So if you do that, so similar up here, what I wanted to do was I wanted to go get any completed job and I wanted to keep on going. Similar here, go get me the completed jobs, receive that job, right? But then keep on going. I don't want to impact I don't want to wait for them all to complete. If you did just get job and wait for job, it will get all the jobs. So let's actually kind of.
This is answering the question of how would you step out if one of the one of the jobs just hung for an extended period of time. So you could do a counter for how many times you loop through the while loop. And if it gets to, say, 120 seconds, then you'd want to step out. And
Okay.
you are correct. I think it was Brad that was talking where if you pipe get job into receive job will only work on completed jobs.
Yeah, I did have to use the wait to make sure that it completed before it passed it to receive job, but yeah.
And this is a bit, I would put the waiting ahead of the sleep, just so you get the waiting before it goes to sleep. Again, nitpicky.
All right, let's see what happened to this one. Let's see if this goes. We're going to count no matter what. This counter is greater than 10.
Less than 10, right?
Huh?
Doesn't it to be less than 10?
It's going to always be less than 10 no matter what until I count it.
Yeah, but if you're
It's a while loop.
while count is greater than 10, so it'll never run.
Oh, you're right. Everybody's keeping me honest today.
Now, to be fair to Phil, he's coding this on the fly.
Yes.
It's impressive so far.
All right. Oh, well, okay, we're close. But at least we're waiting.
Auto reload cannot be
I think
used
I-
without wait.
That what? Cannot be used.
Interesting.
Well, I did the wait up here, but I guess that's why I did it. So it will wait for that job, but that's why I did this. I'm trying to go through, because you go through and code this. So receive job, yes, I want to receive any jobs, but I want to wait for that job to complete. But I only want to give it jobs that have been completed. So if as somebody had said, I'm not sure who that was, but if you say just get job, you're going to get them all the runnings,
Yeah.
all the waitings and everything. And then the receive and the wait job will just wait for them all to complete and then keep on going. But at this point, I only want to get back the completed ones. I only want to pass them to receive.
But receive job, if you have the wait parameter, it's only going to grab completed jobs. So I feel like the get job state completed is just redundant at this point.
So you're saying that I don't even need this.
Well, you need the get job, but I don't think you need to stay completed.
But if I do this, it will only ever run it once, because it will wait for all the jobs to complete before. But I only want to give it jobs that have already completed. So yes, to your point, it will only get a completed job, but I only want to give it completed jobs. Any of the jobs that aren't running, I don't want it to wait for. I want to keep on going. I want to do my waiting down here. So let's see what happens.
In case some of those jobs never finish.
So you may need to remove the jobs outside of your while loop.
Yes. Long term. What did I do? What are we still doing? Did I not save? Cancel.
You have to reload it.
Yeah, maybe I did forget to reload it. Come on. Come on. All right. Save. Okay, we're saved. Reload. All right, cross your fingers. Hold on to your butts. And here we go. We got back some data. Here we go. And we're waiting. Oh, we're getting back some. And so this is what you're getting back. We're getting, including the run space ID. We're still waiting for anybody who hasn't completed, but it looks like they've all been completed by the first wait. So we only had to wait once, but then we got them all back because they've been completed by the time we got there, right? And so that's why I dropped it, because once you create a job and you get back that whole job, you also get some more metadata, being the run space ID of that tracking, because you can actually track that ID itself. So I just explicitly removed it. And so most people can throw it back out. That's why it was dropped out before. Any other questions? I think this is great. We're kind of talking through it, and who else wants to ask any other questions, and we can code live.
You should add one thing to it.
Go.
So if get job is 0, so you get no jobs back, counter equals 10, so it doesn't wait for no reason.
No.
You 0?
Hold on, I'm not getting there. Let me think about what I'm just typing. I'm typing live, man. Yes, this is gonna do. I want to count them though. I guess we could just this should come back and give me nothing.
Also make that a do while loop instead, and
Yeah,
then
so
have
you know
a
what?
break if
I got this
you're out
guy
of
who's
jobs.
still in there waiting. So I didn't collect them all. He was never received. Why was he never received? Probably because it didn't come from there.
So your
Or
get job state needs to be running.
I think this didn't collect them all, and then we dumped out. I don't know why we didn't get them all. You know what? I don't know how long that's been out there. It could have just been from something else.
Good job.
Finger job. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this whole other thing I can't see. It's in the middle there. There's a see.
Why do you need the counter?
I wanted it to. At this point now, I don't need the counter at all because
You
so
could
long
s-
as there
you
are
could-
jobs.
Yeah, you could say, well, get job. Yeah.
Because I guess that makes sense.
But you want the state running.
Get job dot status equal
Well,
running.
Well, at this point, if you get any jobs, but I'm automatically removing them here, so it'll remove the job, and so it will keep going until there are no
all
jobs.
the jobs are removed.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that a lot.
But it will
All
keep
right,
going.
so I'm gonna jump in on this too, because this is one of the things that I do on my jobs is I always give them a name,
I did.
and so that the jobs are always start with something I'm expecting. Because if you just do get job on a system that's running multiple jobs, you may run into some oddballs here. I don't know if you cover that anywhere else, Phil.
I do not, but good point. We could do that too. Get all the jobs where the name is.
Well, so where do you create the jobs?
I'm up here creating jobs. All right, do we go now? This is code review number 1.
No, but you can, where you create them, you can save that to a variable and only look at the list of jobs you created.
That is also possible. So
That works too.
I think I'm doing that with PS run jobs. I think I do that later on. No, I did that somewhere. Thought I did that somewhere. Is to hold on to them. Actually, I think it's the Copilot one. I think one of the Copilot ones that do that. Create my list. Throttle limits. No. Thought I did it. Dang it. I know I did it somewhere. I think there was one of them that I did. All right. So we're doing good. I like this. Everybody's doing great. Everybody's participating. All right. So we're going to run this one more time. Save. Going to come back to, we don't want him. We're running 3. Going to run him again. Oh, I need to run the new one. What happened to my screen? Oh, cancel. Getting the extra jobs. Run this new one. All right, so what's this going to look like? Hey, go getting the runs. Getting the running. Where's my waiting? Where's my waiting? Hey, waiting. I kept getting the waiting. We got a couple. Why am I still waiting? Why am I still
What are
waiting?
you waiting for?
Now I'm waiting. Oh, there you go. That's why I'm waiting. That was freaking 7. Remember? 7 was that one that's dead. That doesn't exist. And they gave me back an empty part, but 7 sat there and waited. But as to our test, we finally came here. We were waiting. We got back 1, 2, 3. Got back 3 more while we were waiting, and then we got another 2, and then we just waited for 7 to finally die. So in that form, what did we kind of learn at this point? So let's kind of do a quick recap. What did we do? So we started off with some random code where we said, hey, you know what? Here's my code. This is come back here. This is a standard function you'll see everywhere. You look online, people's giving you some generic stuff. Hey, we have some begin stuff. All my stuff, I'm going to wrap it all into for each. But then going, hey, now I have this code that I've run before. It's all good. How do I parallelize it? At the barest basic way you can do it is we can then come to this guy and say, hey, we're going to take that code that we want to run in parallel, and we're going to stick it into a script block and call it a script block, but basically it's a variable. Take the whole thing, stick it into a variable. We're going to kind of add some stuff to it. So we add some parameters to it if we want to pass stuff in. If it didn't need any parameters, fine, we don't need to do any parameters, right? But in this form, we want to do something special for that particular computer, and for, you know, the other stuff is just coming because we wanted to pass some data in that we had from the outside, okay? Then we just basically create run jobs. We keep run spaces. We create run spaces for each one and then keep on going. So it's like, do some work, pick off this to go and keep on going. So that's a construct that we can use, right? So that's a big paradigm shift that people need to understand. And then kind of we talked about some other stuff, just how to get stuff back as it's going along. At its core, what one of the gentlemen said, his typically thing is you don't run this, and you simply at the very end, you say, go get me all the jobs, you just wait for them all to finish, right? That is an option. But in my case here, what I wanted to do is get backdate jobs as I went along, right? So I can see, hey, are we making progress? Are we not making progress? Let's talk about that. Let's go through that. Yeah.
Hey, Phil, right quick. There was one thing that, by the way, this is amazing work. But on line 55, we didn't comment out the select object like we did in line 66. So we were getting
different
unbalanced objects coming back based on how quickly it was running. I was trying to figure out, I was like, what is happening there? And that's why.
That's why, yes. So here we can watch it happen this way, but you can, because you wanted me to pull that other part out. That's why. And you can kind of see what he's kind of talking about is we're getting this getting this back here, but then before we get this back, right? Because I'm expressly, if it came back in the code, I want to drop out that run space because I don't really need it, right? And the reason I did that is because I don't, typically when I'm running this stuff, what I'm also doing, actually come back to my run, this is 90% of the time I'll run this kind of stuff, and then I'll say, you know, exports, Excel, you know, and keep on going, right? Dump it to a file. Or you can even just say, you know, out file. If you really, you know, are arcane, you know, just dump it, draw to a file. Or export CSV. Or if you really like things, I'm going to come down to the next line. I'm going to say T object into a variable, you know, I'm going to say data, and then export CSV. If you're like, what the hell is he just doing there? That's also kind of a fundamental stuff. We're going to say path. Yeah, that looks good. Yeah, right? So what do we just do? If we run this, yeah, that works. I'm going to run the whole thing. Oh, breakpoint. No, other one.
Yes,
you're supposed to put yourself on mute before you laugh openly at me, okay?
No, I was laughing at Clem. Yes, he is showing off.
All right. So what the hell are we doing?
Waiting on that dang number 7.
Yeah. Oh, we did get data back. No, did we not? We didn't get any data back. Why did I not get anything to the console? Oh, because we're outputting to a CSV. I'm like, why can't I see anything on the console? Because I'm to a CSV. But now we come back to what the hell was this T object thing? So we have a CSV, right? But now I have this thing called data, and there's all my data. Right? Into a table, and there's my data. So what I did is I took the output and I stuck it into a variable, and I kept on going. Right? So that's also a trick. And because Clem's here, I'm gonna, you know, throw it out there here. Let's show off some more. Maybe I don't even
Phil,
need. Yes, sir.
A quick question in there. Did 7 show up on the console?
No, 7 does show up it will show up on the console. Yeah. It'll show up, but it'll show up in the order it was finally aired out. And so one of the things is you'll kind of also see is that they're coming out in different orders because it's only coming back in the order that it was sent back, then the job completed. Sometimes they're slow, sometimes they're fast, but I don't really give a crap, right?
As long as you get the data.
Correct. So I'm not trying to sort the data, but I'm getting, hey, these are the machines that I can access, these are the machines that I can't access, and I prefer, in my preference, I like this kind of data better. If I'm inputting 100, I want to know that I got 100 out. right? Give me something back. Or even if it's like, all 0 in this case, because it's data, it's number data, I just say, give me zeros. I just know that zeros are nothing. Or you could just have a flag that says true or false, error, whatever. You can do some of that other stuff. But now I'm adding data to the top.
Is that dollar data variable a standard system object that you could actually apply a sort to?
Yes.
Hold on. So
it's just a variable containing a collection of job results. So you can sort it.
Yeah, well, yeah. Pipe that a get member. I just want to see what that.
It is. Yes, custom objects. It is what came to the console. So whatever went to the console just went into it. So it is exactly like running, dollar data equals blah 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 blah.
Right.
Right.
I was just going to say, can you do dollar data pipe sort?
Yes.
Yeah. Here, data sort. I'm going to format table again. And actually, what's it going to try and sort on? We're going to sort on computer name. Right. So here they are in numerical order. Right. We're going to sort by days. So now they are in how long they've been. So this guy's been up for the longest, and these guys aren't even on.
Got it.
But then still, it's just an object. So you can say where days, and for those who don't know, question mark is where, or I can do the whole where object days is greater than 0. And again, we're going to format to a table, and now I only get back the ones that are valid. Right? It is an object. It is just like if we're setting it into a variable.
Right. It's a collection.
It is whatever got sent to the console, whatever got output this pipe, whatever came out this pipe. It says, hey, I'm going to, just like a T, I'm going to send 1 into this variable, and I'm going to send 1 out to the pipeline, 1 into this, and 1 across to this. Right? So that's the T. Right. Now, if you understand T well enough too, is that T has some other properties. If you don't want to set it into a variable, you can also, come on, control space. You can send it into a file. So you can just write to a log file if you want. That's possible. So to your point, hey, if what happens, if it happens, I can just take all these items and just keep writing to a file. Bum, 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 bum. But what I'm going to get out to the file is going to be like the console representation of whatever this file type is. So I'm not going to get this formatted list. I'll get it to look like this. This is what will come back in that file. So you then need to parse it, and you got to do some other stuff. So I don't usually send it to a file unless I'm doing some of the logging information.
Yeah. So
here we go.
It'd be worth testing. I don't know if it goes through the formatter.
Yeah, I don't think it goes through the formatter. I've never seen it do that.
So what you end up is, if it doesn't go through the formatter, it would be the 2-string result of the object, which may not be the presentation you want.
So we're going to run this one more time. Here we go. We're going to live dangerously. So we're going to see what comes out into out.
And but if it does go through the formatter, then it'll be the same format as.
There it is.
Yeah,
that's what's coming out.
So it is going through the formatter.
Yep.
That's the default format.
Yep. So that's what came out. That's in that out file. So that's what we got out. This is fun. I like this. All right. So it's kind of fun in this respect, is because this is really the raw of what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to kind of start with almost nothing. We kind of worked after that action in that meeting again I keep referring to, is this idea of throwing all this data and what happens. So we got him to this stage. Hey, here we are, put it all in the process block, just dump it in here, and then just run it multiple times. And then I was like, oh, what about piping on, doing some other stuff? So kind of talk through that. And so the kicker here is I'm actually using this for each. And so if I input an array, kind of talked before about that. If I stick the array here, or if I stick the array on the front half and I pipe it, again, because I'm running the process block each time and I into the jobs, it just works that way, right? You can do them all in parallel. I think we'll just save everything. It'd be dangerous. But we're going to go from there. So similarly, you can use the ingrained, this looks almost identical, but this is going to use thread jobs. This is going to be run spaces. So this is Boprox wrote a module similar to it. So, I wanted to go, I didn't say that. Get job, start job, and all of that. That is backward compatible to version 2 or 3. I think it's version 3. So at inbox, living off the land, that's your code to use. There are some other stuff, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about now, is that some newer stuff. There is Boprox wrote many years ago is run spaces, which is PS run jobs. What's it called? Actually, what's the module? Let's go find out the module. Get module. Something. Do we remember the name of the command? Clusters? No. Tell me this is going to work, because I know it should work. Okay, not going to work. Save this one, come back to 4. Find out if it doesn't work. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Oh, it did. It imported the module. Module's somewhere in there. But still works, but it's using RS jobs. So it's not using the get job, it's using a module called RS jobs. And you'll see slightly, it runs a little bit faster, but here it is. Now it's waiting for all those jobs, RS jobs. So it uses another module, and it gives you a GUI kind of response. So it uses progress bar, and it's going to sit there and wait and kind of give you some progress. And so I say that is that the core fundamentals we talked about before, hey, get jobs, and it's going to do this thing. We can go through and similarly what we did before, hey, when's it going to come back? We got some data. We're passing new stuff in. We're going to get all of them, and we got them individually as they come along. As the thread jobs, the RS jobs, run space jobs, there was just a different implementation of running run space jobs, right? So these are just a small variation of that, and you can use an external module. I'm trying to think of, actually, you know what? I can do it this way. Get command, get RS job. And the name of the module is Posh RS job. There you go. I finally found the module name. So that's the name of the module. It's just installed on my machine, so it automatically imports. But if you wanted to do threads and thread spaces, run spaces and threads, RS jobs is a really good thing. But it's an external thing that you have to install yourself. So it gives you, as you saw, some slightly more advanced options, only because, hey, I like the fact that, hey, I get some GUI back. You get some...
So do you have a reason when you use Bo's module versus thread job?
Just done it for so long that that's the one that was always there. So
thread job ships in PowerShell. It's not in 5.1, but you can install it, but it's in 6 and above.
So, well, that's 7.0 thing. So actually, I didn't actually talk about, I guess, thread jobs for PowerShell core and above, 6 and above. 5.1 is down. That's probably why I use it here. But the other point is that later on, we'll get to for each parallel, using for each itself with the parallel block, because that's 7.0 and above, right? So that's in core and above. I didn't really think about core. I don't really even think about 6 because I never really use 6. I just from 5.1, swear I 5.1, and if I can use 7, I go all the way to 7. 7.
Yeah. So So there's a module called thread job that started shipping in PowerShell 6.
Yeah.
And it's in the gallery, and you can install it, and that's the one the PowerShell team wrote. So that's another way to do multi-threading.
But it's core dependent. It doesn't work in 5.1. Right?
No, it does.
Oh, it does.
Yeah, you can install you have to install the module in 5.1, but it's and it's on the gallery, and it's the module
All right.
from Microsoft.
Not that there's anything wrong with Bo's module.
Yeah, so I was wondering if there was some technical difference between Bo's implementation and Microsoft's thread job module that.
No.
Yeah.
You
so
know what? I will give it the old once over, and give you my feedback.
I don't know the actual details of it, but I know that Bose was using, it was a wrapped version of doing run space factories, so you didn't have to mess around with all the .NET run space factory. And then when ThreadJob came out, I switched over to using ThreadJob.
I didn't know you could use ThreadJob in Windows PowerShell.
Yeah.
And I think I originally ran into Bose's implementation and looked at it and went, "Wow, this is really nice."
So also in that same form, you don't actually have to. You can do it a different way. And so this is now we're branching off into different ways to do it, right? And so the way in which typically I'll also use parallelization is I'll be given a function like this. Hey, I just can use get. I can just use my get uptime, but it doesn't support functions itself. I have to consume somebody else's stuff. So this is kind of in that same vein. So hey, this is Cookie Monster Warren Frame kind of put this together many years ago, and I don't think he doesn't support it at all anymore, but because he's gone way past it. But it still works, and it's still on the gallery, and you can still find it, and it's phenomenal. And the reason I like it is that, hey, I can just take whatever I'm looking for, and so long it takes in pipelined input, and then you basically just give it the script block itself. So, hey, we're going to run 0 again, and then I'm going to import the fact that 0 exists. So it needs to, again, we talked about this thing of, hey, we need to inject the pieces that we want. So you can also say in here, you can import any variables you need. You can import modules you need. It has a throttle limit. So only do so many in the current time. So the reason I say that, so you can say, actually, you know what, I need to import those functions. Import functions, we're going to say throttle. I'm going to say 3 at a time. Right? It'll only run 3 of them at a time, right? So at this form, all we're doing is running the get uptime, but for each computer that we're going to pass in from get a computer. So kind of, and before we were sticking it at a parameter. Now we're going to run get uptime each time. So what's this look like? But so it looks, what did I break? I've been messing with my code too much. So you can see, hey, we're running the base once, but then it's only running in sets of 2. Now, why is it going to break? What's broken? Running query thread chunks. I don't know what we're doing. I think we broke. They all ran. First of them. So you can kind of see here, we've created 9 threads. We've only 18, and we're waiting for something to come back. There's something wrong with this. I might have to crash. I think I broke the run space.
Did you invoke first?
Oh, we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Start a new console. This might actually work. Let's try this again. Oh, I need to define my 0, though. This one is invoke. Import active directory. Yeah, maybe it doesn't like the throttle. That should work. It's breaking. What am I breaking? Run space data. And stop because
I ran into that.
Access denied. I'm getting an access denied. Why am I getting an access denied? Yeah. we're going to skip over. Ultimately, there's a structure. There's another structure in which you're running some stuff. Hey, you have some extra code. I typically will run it as like, hey, get AD computer for a bunch of other stuff, because AD computer can't do it in parallel. Do that. So that's an option there. So we kind of played this idea of like Copilot, what you can do. So I just asked Copilot to do it for me. And this is what Copilot gave me. So I'm like, hey, here we go. And so it decided it wanted to use for each parallel. I was like, oh, we could do that. So what it did before is it looks almost identical to what we've given before. Came along, did, okay, we're going to use get parallel. It's going to take the computer name, and for each one of those, as I give it multiple, it's going to just take the whole thing, stick it inside of here, and then use all the variables that we've done before. So it's kind of similar. And then I think I added the throttle limit. But for each object can take a throttle as well. So we can do it from there. So let's see what this guy looks like. So this kind of looked familiar, but now that we're in PowerShell 7, it looks kind of similar. You know what? I didn't throw any like verbosing. Yeah, we don't need the verbose. But this looks almost identical to what we did before, and it did the entire thing in sequence form as a parallel. So if you have the option to actually use PowerShell 7 or above, you can use for each parallel. So for each item, instead of first one, the first one, the first one, it can run them all in parallel. But ultimately, you notice too, is that what happened here is because I gave it an array, it did them all in parallel. But if I give it this way, it's only going to do the first one, and then the first one, and then the first one, and then the first one. It's doing one item in parallel, one item in parallel, as opposed to, so in this structure, back to here, what we're getting back is parallelizing whatever I pass in here. So if I pass in this as an array, well, then I'm getting the whole array in parallel. But if I pass in one item into this process block, well, then I only get one item for each. One item for each.
Hey, Phil?
Yeah.
So what is the downside, if any, to using the parallel option? I understand you're running multiple things at once. Is there a performance issue? Why should somebody not use it? Or more importantly, why isn't for the for each, why isn't dash parallel set as the default option? Because it sounds like it'd be quicker and more efficient.
It takes a performance hit overall, because if you go ahead, Sean, get the Microsoft answer.
There's more overhead because it has to spin up multiple run spaces. So there's you have to find the inflection point where the added overhead is less than the time it takes. So if you have long-running tasks, the added overhead is minimal.
Okay.
So, and then it's good for things that are I/O bound versus compute bound, because if they're compute bound and you're running them all in parallel, then you're bogging down your CPU. There still can be performance benefits, but it's one of those things you have to measure the performance to see which is the better choice. But for things that are I/O bound, where they're waiting, you do have efficiencies gained by spinning up another thing that can wait for the I/O. There's a
couple of good articles talking about that, though. So
yeah,
if you really want to get into the weeds, that's kind of the weeds at this point. So for the structure we're at this point, it's not.
Okay.
Just dropped the performance articles in the chat.
There you go.
Thank you, Sean.
This is where I was thinking before. So we kind of talked about what the problem here. So Copilot just gave me some code and go, hey, I think it works, and I get it, right? But understanding, because we've kind of talked and we understand this idea of how often the begin block runs, how often the process block runs, and that kind of stuff, as I just said it, is if we take 20 items and we pass in, we get this parallel for 20 items all in parallel, right? Up to the throttle limit we talked about at the bottom, which was 100, right? We can slow it down. But if we pass across the pipeline, we're getting the first item in process. So you're for each parallel of one item. All right, well, that's not going to help me if I want to pipe stuff into this command versus just giving it an array. So those are two separate functions. So then this version is kind of like my modified version of what Copilot gave me, is what we simply do is we take what I did is at the very beginning, hey, create my list. Give me a list, right? And then if I pass in an array of whatever, then I'm just going to stick it into the list and keep on going. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to get my begin, we create this list. For each time we pipe something in, we're just going to build this list, add this list. And when we finally get to the end, hey, we're going to force ourselves. Now, if I piped in 10 things, then I'm going to do my for each parallel on the 10 things. If I just gave it a whole 10 things the first, well, I now have 10 things, and I keep on going. So changing where this block comes, and now I'm again taking the code out of the process and sticking it in the end. So we're going to collect them all, and then we're going to put them. So now in this version of the code, this version of what Copilot gave us, hey, if I give it the array as a parameter, it's going to run those 10 items, and it's going to do them in parallel. Hey, here we go, do them all in parallel, and I'm formatting content. Here we go, right? You know what? I'm going to drop all of this. I don't think outgrid view. Yeah, you know what? Just for clown, I'm going to leave it in there because I'm going to show off. Like, hey, did you know you can also go give me all the items, and then hey, I get a list. Here's all the items themselves. Actually, go give me freaking everything. I want all these items, right? So you can go give me some data. I can get some nice GUIs. Here's the ones I want to get. So now I have this subset list, and then I pass it on to for each parallel, right? And I'm not getting this continuous process because that's not what Copilot gave me as far as the code. But it's going to do the same thing. It's going to try and reach out to each machine, and it's doing it all in parallel. But I think I gave it, there it is, boom, got them. That's why it failed, or I didn't get any back midstream, is because I just can't talk to any of them. That's fine. But it's the same thing. It ran them all in parallel. I got them all in parallel because even though I sent them across the pipeline in a big bulk, one, boom, 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 I collected them all. By the time I got to the end, then I did the work. Right? So I collected them all first. Any questions? And what is this last one doing? Let's see for this one. For each parallel. And I can't remember. I'm doing craziness. Computer for each parallel. What's the difference?
That's why I need comments.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd get this far.
Select that one, select get outside 7, and then right click and do compare.
I think it's actually the same thing as 6. It looks like the same thing as 6. Compare to select. Compare with selected. I didn't do it. I didn't do anything. We're only throttling 5 of them. That's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. I had another version, and I was like, oh, I'm not going to go looking through my file system to go find out where the other one is. But I had another one that was also doing another version of Parallel.
What's that compare thing you just did there?
So VS Code, you can take in any file. You can say, hey, I'm going to select this file for compare. This is going to be my reference. And then this is going to be my comparison with that reference. And so it will, if you have data files, you can do this. It'll give you, source control and that kind of stuff. That's what, I use it for often. Or somebody will give you some raw data files and what's the difference?
Thank you.
So, all right. So any other questions? I'm really happy that a lot of people volunteered in and kind of, chatted up things. But that's the gist of, where we are. I wanted to, this was that premise.
So can you talk about thread safe? Thread safe stuff. There's been some comments over in the chat about thread safe being a question mark.
Trying to think of, can I give a good authoritative answer on thread safe stuff other than
so the
Sean can do it.
For example, if you're if the thread job that you are scheduling in parallel is writing to a global variable, you'll be writing to that global variable from multiple threads, and that can cause corruption. Data can be overwritten. And if you're doing, so you're doing like file system operations on where you're reading to a file, reading from a file while another thread is writing to it, that can cause deadlocks. So those are not thread safe operations. So if you're trying to use, if you're trying to store data from a thread, you have to use a thread safe data type. You were there, you went too far.
Is this the right meeting? No. Which one's the right meeting? Is the
right meeting?
No, that's not the right meeting. The one at the top of your recent, that one.
Oh yeah, somebody already posted it in there. Okay. So I guess the point being is that this PowerShell's comp, you did a good one, and this guy did a really good job of kind of at least talking through it. He doesn't give a really good example. He kind of talked through it. So this is a really good reference. It's in there now. He talks about different thread spaces and what data types to use in which code and where to put them and that kind of structure at this point. So Sean's doing a good job. Keep on going, Sean.
Yeah, so that's the main thing. There are special data types in .NET that are designed to be thread safe to allow concurrent access. And so you have to use one of those types if you're writing to a collection object from multiple threads. But like I said, you also have to watch out for doing other non-thread safe operations on the system, like reading and writing registry keys or files or whatever,
Yeah, he kind of talks about this in this form too, is that actually creating reference objects that you're reading and writing from and using those as a queue. Hey, all I want to do is add something to this queue that is thread safe. And then in another section of my code, I'm just going to be pulling from that queue. And so it's just going to be sitting there waiting for the queue to fill up. And he kind of talks about that at the end here somewhere. It's like, go crazy. Yeah, even the idea, he just puts things into the queue and then just picks them up as they go along. And so it becomes thread safe at that point. Like, hey, loops until there's nothing in the queue, that kind of stuff. So this was a really good, video. And this was just recently, this is basically what this video is of their kind of like lightning demos at PowerShell Conf EU, which happened just a couple of weeks ago. And so PowerShell Conf EU did props to them, and they did a phenomenal job with a lot of their content. There have been a lot of great videos, and you should definitely add it to your YouTube watching collection. So, and if anybody else has any other, because at this point, he said, like this point, he was talking about threads don't need to run the same code. Is you could have one thread doing this work, another thread doing something else. I think he shows it and how it was done. Yeah, he's just using reference flags, right? So in the code itself, in the same thread, he basically waits for something else to happen, and then when something else happens, right? And so that same block of code can be doing multiple things based upon what it's waiting for, right? So it's the same block of code doing different things based upon what flag it's running in space. While status do this work, while other do some other work. So communication between threads, that kind of fun stuff. So it's a really good watch. All right, back to my garbage code. Anything else? Any other questions or thoughts?
Thank you, Phil, for talking about that, because when you start doing when you start doing stuff in parallel, you run into this quick as soon as you want to write out stuff.
Yeah, and to Sean's point is, hey, you can do this all in parallel, but when you're actually interfacing with external systems, you just need to be aware of what you're doing. In this fashion, what I'm doing is doing a lot of gets. Well, that's fine. That's not doing anything. But if you're trying to then write stuff out, and I kind of mentioned before, hey, I'm going to write to a file. Well, again, you can't trust that the file isn't locked. If the file, who's writing on top of each other, all of that stuff. And so if I'm actually trying to write a file, sometimes what I'll actually do is write to a new file each time. So like a file with the computer name of what I'm doing. And so all of a sudden now I get 85 files, but each one is expressly independent of the other, and no job is going to overwrite the other and interface with the other. So you just need to be conscious of that. So I've done that in the past.
Or use a directory for all of your files. And
yeah, but you're keeping each file independent of the other files. You're not using one folder and one file that you're just adding to each time, because you can't trust that you're going to run on. That's the whole thread safe.
That's also a nasty workaround, right? Because you need to kind of you've now got this massive files that you need to figure out how to go and grab everything in those files and put it into one output.
Yeah, Sean were saying?
I was going to say, yeah, you could use like the thread ID or the job ID as part of the file name to make it unique and make all the output for a particular job go to a different file.
Or GUI or unique names.
There's plenty of documentation on how on different methods in which to do thread safe operations if you're not using a thread safe type. Or, back to this video, you just use thread safe types and do the same work.
But I like the idea about going and using the job names, because the job names need to be unique anyway. Or sorry, the thread names need to be unique anyway.
Yeah, you'll get a unique ID for that thread, so you can use that, and then it's easier to tie the output to a specific instance as well.
All right. Any other questions? Thanks, everybody.